Hey guys, this is James Hall with Bassmaster Magazine. Joining me is John Jones with Lochow Ranch Pond and Lake Management. And what we're going to bring to you is a series of videos on how to create your bass fishing dream as far as small lakes are concerned. And we're calling it the Lake Y Project. We found a lake somewhere in Alabama. It's about 56 acres we know nothing about. And really what we want to do is figure out, ask the professional, why do you do certain things to make a fishery better? So John, if we're looking at a brand new clean slate of a lake, what is the first thing that you're going to want to do to start the survey process?
I think we always first start with satellite photos. We try to look at what's going on with the lake over the last 20 or 30 or 40 years, and there's a database out there that we're able to examine what's happened over time. So the first thing I did on this project was to examine to see when the lake was built, how much watershed it has, which instantly influences what type of species are likely to be in the lake, and how often there's going to be flushing. It's going to influence some of the management strategies, things like fertilization and adding lime or gypsum. So that's step one. Step two would be a visual assessment. We're out here today. It's a beautiful spring day, and want to see what's going on with the lake just without even putting the electrofishing boat in. So what do I notice? First, I notice that it's a pretty shallow ravine here, and I notice that the dam is pretty small. So that tells me it's probably going to be a shallow lake. Look at the water color, which is going to influence a lot of things that will dictate and drive growth. Look at the animal community. I've noticed we have evidence of otters, we have evidence of geese out here. Looks to be fairly manicured, not a lot of fertilizer coming in from a lawn perspective. I look at the amount of boats in and how many boats are in the water and what state of disrepair or repair they're in to give me a hint of how often people are fishing the lakes. We looked at the fish feeders, generally quantified their state of repair and what quality of feed was in the lake. Then, after that, usually we want to look at the spillway, which this lake has a great spillway. That's dictated by the fact that there's a live creek or semi-live creek going through here, and so a lot of money was put in the spillway and has a great spillway. After that, we usually try to set up an electrofishing survey and see what's going on underneath the water.
I got you. Does it matter? So there's a lot of people on Bassmaster.com that are going to have access to bodies of water, and the range of size is going to be all over the map. Can you speak to whether or not it matters how big a lake is to grow, say, a trophy bass?
Well, you can always put a lot of inputs into a small lake, and I know of lakes that are 1 acre that have a lot of bass in the double digits. But it takes top shelf management, a lot of inputs to get a lake there and keep it there. It's always at the cusp of a crisis. So the bigger a lake is, the more lake effect you have, and the easier it is to have a few larger fish. Generally speaking, if somebody wants to grow trophy bass, I like to stay between 3 and 10 acres. And my reasoning for that is that's big enough to have more than a couple bass in the lake, but not so big that the per acre cost can overwhelm an average budget.
Gotcha. And so, and I guess goal setting is an important aspect of pond and lake management, because there's plenty of people like me. I'm just happy to get a bite. So
Fair enough.
I would be thrilled to come out here and be able to catch 10, 15 bass in a few hours. That'd be a great day for me. So I suppose realizing one's goal before going into a management program is pretty important.
It's of the utmost importance. A lot of people would first blush say, I want to grow a 10-pound bass, but they may or may not want to grow a 10-pound bass. They may not want the time commitment usually involved or the monetary commitment. Really, money just speeds things up. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to have a great lake. It just happens to speed things up. But yeah, quantifying your goals and understanding your starting place. So I always ask customers to either give me a budget or a timetable or a set of goals, and then we make a management plan based on 1 or 2 of those criteria.
I got you. All right. Well, that's good information. And I tell you what, why don't we go ahead? You said the first thing we need to do is take a really solid visual inspection of the lake.
Mhm.
And so let's why don't we go ahead and show everybody what this lake looks like, and then as we come up upon something interesting that they might need to know, we can point it out.
Sounds great.
Okay, well, for now we're coming over to, I always try to go to the boathouse or dock or wherever people gather. It tells me a lot about what's going on with the lake. And come over here, some things I noticed right away. There's a little bit of erosion, not a lot. I noticed that the only plant community that exists today is stuff that's pretty resistant to grass carp. And so I have a hint that there's probably grass carp in this lake just by looking at this. Those are all very woody, kind of crunchy type plants that grass carp don't like. I look at the boats over here and I notice that about half of them seem to be in a state of disrepair and not being used. It tells me about 50% of the community probably is not fishing a lot. Look at that and I wonder if they've been doing it yourself fertilizing. This looks like something you might buy bulk fertilizer, have it dropped off and fertilize the lake. These two types of boats right here, especially these right here, are my favorite boats. There's a lot of variations on this. Some companies make better than others, but this type of boat, in my opinion, with a few tweaks, is the best boat that you can have on a private lake. It can be left outside. It can be outfitted with solar chargers. Here you have electricity, which is a real luxury. If you get it without the carpet, it's really, really dependable and weatherproof. And these are just great boats when outfitted correctly. Well, it smells like a low protein feed was used here. Yep, there's a few pellets. So a lot of people think fish feed is created equal, but it's not. You want to use something low to mid 40s on a protein with a high fat content. This feeder looks to not be used a lot, which gives me, again, maybe another hint that the feeding program is not as robust as it could be. See if we could find any feed. Yeah, here we go. Nope. Cattle cubes. A hint that there's probably a lot of catfish going on in this lake, and people will throw that out to attract catfish. So I do notice the water to be quite off color. Now, you know, each time you visit a lake, it's just a snapshot, and so there's no telling if there is a lot of catfish in here, if the water's always this color, but it certainly is off color today. There we are. This feed's been here a while. There's dead animals in it. And I believe this particular feed is from Texas, up in Munster. It's a great catfish feed, but this is a very low protein, low fat feed that is not appropriate for game fish if you're trying to grow great fish. This is more targeted for catfish. So now we know what kind of feed is being used and what kind of management inputs as far as when it comes to feed has been used out here. I don't know if we'll get any fish to feed today, but not a lot. Overall though, just a beautiful lake, and my gut is that it's being used more for aesthetics than growing fish. So I noticed we got a great concrete spillway. As a fisheries biologist, I normally hate concrete spillways. And the reason is because if you come on the back side of here, and this one was done really well, so I'm not going to be able to find some of the common problems, but usually this is not keyed in back here, and the water will come over the top and it'll erode on the back side and it'll start to channel underneath the concrete. And when that happens, it's really, really hard to fix. So a lot of spillways that we see that have concrete, we've got to come back and completely disassemble the spillway and put in a fresh one. This one, an engineer was obviously involved with, and just did a great job on the spillway. So going back, we got murky water, we have water willow and milfoil plants that grass carp don't like to eat. Got one more hint here. It looks like there's a pretty country version of a grass carp barrier that you used to go across here. So I'm looking, and I see holes through there. So instead of building a hard fence, they made it out of cable, which is still going to be legal. But at some point, this was taken down or rusted and not replaced. So now I'm basically positive that grass carp have been part of a management strategy out here. I love the thought and money that went into a spillway. People think all the time about building a great lake, and a lot of times they'll build a great dam, but they just completely forget about this part. And this is the most important part of this lake, because without this being done well, it will eventually fail. And this one was done well. Tremendous amounts of engineered riprap put in here, cut off trenches on both sides, great concrete work that was spec'd out properly. And we have this kind of one funny thing with the grass carp barrier. And so probably that will have to be addressed, but if and when grass carp are restocked in this lake. I noticed another fish feeder over there. It's pretty small. It's a 100-pound feeder. Not appropriate for this size of lake. That's only appropriate for what we call attractive feeding. Generally, when we're trying to grow bigger fish, we want to have supplemental feeding, and 2 bags of feed on a monthly basis is just not going to get us there. Great spillway though, probably a 9.5 out of 10 when compared to the other ones of similar size. So there's just nothing here but natural land. We look at this dam, and if you just take this dam and flip it over and you put it right out there in the lake, how much depth did you get? Basically none. And so this lake is going to be shallow, shallow, shallow. It cost more to build this spillway than it did to build this dam. And a lot of times people they find a great dam site, which this is a great dam site, but they don't put the money into deepening the lake, because this lake's pretty cheap to make visually a 50 or a 60 acre lake, but it would have cost 10 times as much to get a good deep lake that wouldn't have had some of the problems that a shallow lake have. Now, shallow water is productive. The most productive lakes in the world are aquaculture ponds with the average depth of probably 3 feet. So it's not that they can't produce, they just come with a lot of other considerations, usually weed. We're going to grow a lot of bass in here. We're going to work with what we're given, and so this particular lake is going to almost certainly be shallow with maybe 1 or 2 creek channels through it, maybe a clay borrow site, a pit somewhere that's probably going to be a little bit deeper than the rest. It's going to be a very productive lake, but it's going to have problems. It's going to have a lot of creek type species in here, so you know, it's not what you'd love to have, but at the end of the day, you can't be choosy about it. Instead of trying to fight it, we're going to work with that. So expecting to find gar, a lot of carp sucker type species, drum, catfish, probably all different types of sunfish. The genetics of the lake are probably going to be skewed towards a native genetic. That's just something that you're going to deal with a creek type system. Now, what's probably nice about it is I doubt that the water level varies a tremendous amount. We don't need to waste money. We want to be very targeted. This is a large body of water, and we want to be targeted with any improvements that we make here. We want them to last.
All right, guys. John just walked us through a lot of really interesting things about Lake Y that we didn't know previously. So, John, tell me what you like about what you saw in your initial view, and then maybe identify a couple of challenges that you noticed as well.
Sure. Well, first off, it's a beautiful lake. So,
Beautiful.
you know, just a beautiful lake. Come up here, 10 out of 10, just aesthetics when you first come over the dam, without knowing anything under the water. I noticed that a help and a hindrance could be that it's a multi-owner lake. So there's more than one person making a decision here. Usually there's different user groups that have different priorities, and you'll handle a multi-user lake a lot differently than you will a single-owner lake. So I've noticed that. The water color, I think, is a little bit off, and I think that's going to be a constant source of growth reduction. And now on the flip side, because I believe it to be shallow, I think that's going to help us with weed growth. We don't want to have so many weeds that other owners are upset with it, or you can't go fishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's no fun to grow fish that you can't go catch. I think that the creek is going to present some challenges as far as species diversity. We're going to have a lot of it, maybe more than we like, maybe make it a little less simple. I'm guessing that a pelleted feeding program is going to, we're going to lose some effectiveness due to catfish eating our pellets. And so we're probably going to come up with a catfish control program. I was just guessing, but overall it's a big lake. It looks shallow. It's going to grow a lot of fish. We're going to get a lot of chances to grow a lot of fish. You're not going
So you're saying we have a chance? We got a shot.
You've got a shot.
Hey,
we're going to grow nice fish here, and a lot of them. So look forward to looking to what you have as far as species in there, the relative abundance, the relative condition, and putting together a starting point that gets you where you want to be in your timetable.
That's perfect. All right, guys. So we know we know initially what we think we got. Now we're going to go find out in the next episode in this series what we actually got. We're going to do some shocking.
Beautiful. Look forward to it.
That's going to be fun.
All right.